Hey everybody, it's hwsteele. Today is June 22nd, 2023, and in this video I'm going to talk to you briefly about the program called Astrolog. Now if you're watching this video of mine, you're probably pretty familiar with the fact that I use this program, Astrolog. The current version, as of the recording of this video, the most recent version is Astrolog 7.60. And I use this program a lot to talk about the position of the planets and things astronomically/astrologically. So in this video, I'm just going to do a really quick overview on some of the basic functions, so how to use this program and how to set it up to look like I have it right here. If I remember by the time I'm done recording this video, I'll leave a link in the description of this video to get to the actual page where you can download Astrolog. Now, I'm always going to advise you, if you download anything off the internet, make sure you scan it for viruses. While I've never had any issues from the link that I'm going to put in the description, you never know, so just always be careful. So Astrolog 7.6 is a graphical ephemeris, which just means it uses a picture to show you the positions of the planets and whatever else you have set to be shown on the wheel here. It shows them the position in the zodiac. It also gives you a list of the planets or objects right here with their position. I have it set so it gives you the position of the planet within the actual zodiac, but you can set it so it gives you the position within each sign, which is how they do it in classic Western astrology. So the very first thing we want to do is go up here and click on Info and click on Set Chart Info right here. And this is going to bring up this little box here where you can enter in the month, the day, the year, the time of day, whether daylight savings is or is not active, and then the time zone right here, like I'm in Central Standard Time, which is 6 time zones west of Greenwich Mean Time, and then the latitude and longitude. Now actually I have this right now set up for New York, so I need to set this to Eastern Standard Time so that it will be accurate. So you click OK there, but you can name it current moment now, and you can set the location name right here. And as you see, that information shows up right here. Current moment now, pardon me, shows right here. And New York Stock Exchange, which is the location of these coordinates, shows up right here. So you click OK, and you're good to go for that. So you have all that set. Now, you can, in this set chart info box, you can set the date and the time, or you can use the skip function that's in this program to move forwards or backwards in time. To use the skip function, you have to use the plus or minus keys that are on the actual keyboard, the keypad I should say, not the numbers above the letters on the keyboard, but the actual little keypad off to the right hand side typically. Now if we watch the date up here, we have Thursday, June 22nd, 2023. If you watch that, I'm pushing the plus, and right now it's set to go forward every time I push plus by 1 day. And if I push the minus key, it brings us back to today. So you can go forwards and backwards in time, and you can change the skip rate, or the amount of time it moves each time you push the plus or minus key. And to change it, you hold down the shift key and then push one of the number keys on top of the letters of the keyboard. So the numbers that have like the exclamation point, the @ sign, the pound sign, the dollar sign, all that kind of stuff. So Shift plus 4 will give you 1 day at a time, forward or backwards. Shift plus 3 will move 1 hour at a time. Plus 2, Shift plus 2 will give you 1 minute, and Shift plus 1 will move you 1 second at a time. 5 will give you a month at a time. 6 will give you a year at a time. 7 will give you a decade at a time. Shift plus 8 will give you a century at a time, 100 years. And Shift plus 9 will move you 1,000 years at a time, forward or backwards. So now if we look at the actual wheel right here, we see on the outside of the wheel we have the glyphs, or the symbols that show us the signs of the zodiac. For instance, here's Aries, here's Pisces, Taurus, Gemini, so forth and so on. The next wheel inside, we see these little hash marks, these little lines here. Each one of these is a degree. That's 0 right there, theoretically. In the zodiac, 0 degree starts at the beginning of Aries. So each one of these is a degree. You go all the way around and you get 360 degrees, and you've gone through the entire zodiac. Now the next wheel inside right here has these numbers in it. These numbers represent houses, and I have it set so that the houses are locked to the signs of the zodiac that they correspond with. For instance, Aries is the very first sign of the zodiac here, so the first house is locked to it. Now to do that, you go up to Settings, click on House System, and then down here you have a list, this whole big list of different types of house systems. And if you come down here and click Null, it locks the houses together. If you click on something else, the houses are going to be represented however that particular house system would function. So for the majority of the stuff that I do, I just set it to null, because unless you're looking at an actual horoscope where you have a specific time of day and everything, the houses aren't really necessarily useful. It's not always true, but for the most part, for what I look at, for what I use Astrolog for, it is true. So if I'm using a day at a time, if I'm looking at day time frames and above, then I lock the houses to the signs. If I'm looking at something intraday, then I might turn on one of the particular sign or the house systems. So that's what these numbers are, the houses. And then inside there we have the glyphs that show the planets like Saturn and Neptune. The lunar north node is right there. So we have those displayed. And then you can see these lines between the planets right there. And those are the aspects. Now if you come up here to Settings and click on Restrictions right here, you can turn on or off the different planets, minor objects, house cusps, Uranians, dwarfs. So there's a lot of different possibilities of things you can turn on or turn off. And in this menu right here, if it's unchecked, that means it's turned on. And if it's checked, that means it's turned off. I know that's a little bit counterintuitive, but that's how it works for this. So for instance, we have Saturn right here. If I were to check Saturn, that would turn it off, and Saturn would no longer be displayed in the wheel. See, it's turned off. And then to unrestrict it, you just come back to this menu and turn it back on, and then it appears again. As far as the aspects go, you can turn on and off specific aspects, and you do that by going to Settings, then Aspect Settings right there. And there's a lot of different aspects in this new version, 7.6. They've got quite a list right here that you can click on, turn on and off. And you have the ability to turn it on or off. And again, clicking it where there's a check mark in there, that turns it off. Unclicking it or clicking it so there's no check mark in there, that turns that aspect on. And you can choose the orb for the aspect, the actual angle that the aspect is, and the influence, which I don't ever mess around with the influence because I don't use the influence system that they have in Astrolog. You can also change the color of the line that it is. So for instance, the sextile right here is a 60-degree angle. That's a 60-degree aspect, and it's cyan. And I could change that if I wanted to. Let's say I change it just to green, just to do that. And now we see that the lines are green as opposed to the cyan, the light blue color like it was. And then I can go at any point in time and change it to what it was. So the orb, just in case you're not familiar with that, the orb is the number of degrees before and after that aspect that the program will consider that to be an actual aspect. In other words, I have the orb here set to 2 degrees. So that means that 2 degrees before 60, so like 58 degrees, it starts considering it an aspect that is a sextile. And it will consider that all the way up to 62 degrees. And even though this opposition, which is 180 degrees, or the square, which is 90 degrees, is already pre-programmed in there, you can put any setting, any number of degrees as you want. So I could put like 15 degrees as an opposition if I wanted to. It wouldn't be a true opposition, but it gives you the opportunity to create any aspect you want to. So I frequently will turn on this one right here and then set it to something that I consider important. Like maybe I look at 52 degrees, or maybe I would look at 80 degrees or something like that. Now, all of these odd aspects, like 80 degrees, the binovile right there, those are pre-programmed into this newer version of Astrolog. It didn't used to have anywhere nearly as many aspects pre-programmed into it, I should say, not pre-recorded. But anyway, so there's a lot more usability in this newer version. A lot more things are programmed into it, which is nicer. They've been working on it, obviously. So if we come to, let's see, right here we see that these degrees are degrees of zodiac, meaning 0 degrees right here, and then 360 degrees later we get back to 0 degrees right here, and that's what these numbers are representing right now. But if I wanted to show where each thing was within each sign of the zodiac, I would go to Settings, Display Settings, and right here you can see, pardon me, right here you can see its little section is Display Format. I have it set to 360 degrees right there. And if I click on Zodiac Position instead and click OK, nothing changes in the wheel right here, but in the list we see each planet listed with its position within that sign. For instance, Venus and Mars right here are both in Leo. So Venus is at 17 degrees, 51 minutes Leo. Mars is at 21 degrees, 39 minutes Leo right here. So you can set that obviously however you like. Most of what I do, I like to know the actual degree of zodiac. So that's how I keep that one set. Now these white numbers over here are the latitude of the planets, and that means the number of degrees above or below the plane that's created by the Earth and the Sun. Since we live on Earth, we consider that to be the most important planet for us anyway. And so the Earth's relationship to the Sun is considered a flat surface, even though it's not really technically. And all of the other planets are calculated relative to that plane between the Earth and the Sun. And this is the number of degrees above that plane or below that plane that any of these planets are. So this is the latitude of the planets relative to the Earth and Sun. So you're never going to get more than a few degrees above or below that. If you want the declination of the planets, which is different than the latitude, because the declination is how we perceive it here on Earth. It involves the tilt of the Earth also. If you want a big explanation about exactly what declination is, you can find that all over the internet by doing a quick search. But to set that here, you would go to Settings, to Calculation Settings, and click on Equatorial Latitudes right there. It used to be just the equatorial setting, and that would change the latitudes and the longitudes. But in this newest version of Astrolog, you have the ability to just change the latitudes or just change the longitudes or both of them. So if we want to see the declination over here as opposed to the latitude, we click on that and it gives us the equatorial system's latitudes, or what's known as declination. So here we see there's it's a lot bigger number of degrees, because the tilt of the Earth is incorporated into that also. And again, if you want a big explanation, or a thorough explanation, I should say, of declination, you'll have to look that up. But we see that that's listed over here. So we have the declination of the planets right there. That's pretty cool. So if we want to turn that off, we just go there. You can also go, I think it's Info, and do now Settings. Maybe it's view. There we go. It's view. This is a new one for me where you can click on it and it shows you the parallel or anti-parallel aspects. So the planets, it takes away the longitude, this number right here, takes away these aspects and gives you the aspects from latitude right here. And that gives you a quick graphical representation without having to study the numbers too closely. So anyway, that's a new addition from the version I was using, 6.2 or 6.4 or something like that. I can't remember. So that's pretty cool that they included that. Now you can also go to settings and they have star restrictions where you can turn on certain stars like Sirius right there and include them on the wheel so that you can do studies with those included. And see, it's right here. Pretty cool. I don't use star restrictions a whole lot, or I don't use stars in my studies a whole lot, but I do upon occasion. Now, let's see. The aspect settings, object settings, we can click on this right here. It says heliocentric. Right now we're in geocentric, which we can see right here, and that's viewing the planets as if the Earth were the center of the solar system. And we can go to heliocentric, and that's viewing the planets, we see it listed right there, as though the sun's the center of the solar system. And when you do that, you see that here, this symbol right here, you see the sun go away. We can actually turn the sun back on. Go to restrictions. See the sun is restricted right there. Click on that, the sun turns back on. But if we're on the sun, we obviously, the sun should be right there. It's always opposite its position. The sun's position is always opposite of Earth in heliocentric. So we don't really have to turn the sun on if you don't want to. And viewed from the sun, the moon is going to be always right next to the Earth. This is the symbol for the Earth, and this is the north node, which is something that is calculated between from the moon. And that's always, you're always going to see these three together if they're turned on. So if you're doing some pretty serious heliocentric studies, you would probably want to turn the moon and the north node off, because that cleans the chart up quite a bit. So going back, turning heliocentric off, going back to geocentric, we see that when I changed the moon and the north node were still turned off. The sun automatically turns on and off, and the Earth automatically turns on and off, but anything else, you're going to have to come back in here, click in restrictions, and turn the moon and the north node back on. Now we can also go into view, click on view, and right here it says show graphics, and you see it's checked right there. If we turn that off, we no longer see the graphical representation of the zodiac. We just see a list of the planets, their latitude, their longitude right here, the house that they're in, which I have that set to null, so it's turned off essentially, but if it were turned on, it would give us that information. And a piece of information right here that it gives us that can be helpful at times is the velocity of the planet, number of degrees traveled through the zodiac in a day. So we see, for instance, the moon right here on June 26th is traveling about 12.25 degrees through the zodiac each day. And as I go forward in time each day, it's speeding up. And you see that little plus right there, that indicates that its velocity is increasing. And if I keep going forward a day at a time, it's not indicating that it's increasing, it's indicating that it's a positive velocity, meaning it's moving forward. So if I keep going forward, you see the velocity fluctuate. The moon never ever goes retrograde because it's circling right around the Earth. So we're always going to have a positive velocity for the moon. We'll always have a positive velocity for the sun. But the other planets, Mercury through Pluto, will have a positive or a negative velocity if we're in geocentric, if we're looking at it from Earth. The lunar nodes, the north node, is always going to have a negative velocity because it always moves in a retrograde fashion for the most part. Technically, it's more confusing than that, but for the most part, all we have to know is that it's pretty much always moving in retrograde fashion. So if we want to turn the graphics back on, we just click Show Graphics. So most of the time I keep the graphics on, but if there's a reason I need to see the speed of the planet, then I will turn the graphics off so I can see that speed displayed in this setting right here. Other than that, I'll say that there is a pretty decent help file right there, and by clicking on Help and Open Documentation, you can get a lot of information about this program, because there's a lot more than you can do with this program than I generally use it for. So obviously this video didn't cover anywhere nearly all of the stuff that this program can do. But if there's other things that you're interested or wondering about, can Astrolog do that? Just go to Help and look, and you should be able to find your answer. And for the most part, anything you don't know much about, like for instance the orb, that kind of stuff, you can look up on the internet and there's a lot of different places where you can find the explanation for that kind of stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and call the video right here. That'll give you a basic overview of how to use it and get a running start with it. Hopefully you haven't fallen asleep by this point. But anyway, I will talk to you guys in the next video.